The sun beat down on the desert range as Lieutenant Hawk Miller leaned in, smirking, and asked the quiet officer his own career might envy. The wind whipped at the sand, carrying faint echoes of distant helicopters and the low murmur of armored vehicles rolling into position. It was 0900 hours, and the remote training range sprawled under a cloudless sky. Coordinates set precisely for a joint exercise the SEALs had been anticipating for months. Rows of targets gleamed under the harsh sun, and the metallic scent of spent brass hung in the air. Hawk's team moved with practiced ease, teasing each other about ranks and promotions, joking loudly over radio chatter. Before we begin this mission, hit subscribe and ring the bell, because some stories of courage never made the headlines, but they deserve to be heard. Tell us where you're watching from and who's the hero in your family. "Hey, Viper, you think you can keep up with the old dogs today?" one of the SEALs called, a grin stretching across his dusty face. The others laughed, clapping shoulders and slapping M for variance lightly, as if to punctuate their bravado. Alina Cruz, call sign Viper, stood a few meters away, her posture calm, her eyes scanning the range with sharp precision. She spoke only when necessary, adjusting the straps of her sidearm and checking the M4's optics. Her presence was quiet but unyielding, like a shadow that could strike without warning. Hawk noticed her restraint, rolling his eyes and nudging a teammate. "You ever tell anyone your actual rank, Viper?" he said, loud enough for the nearest men to hear, half joking, half daunting. "Or do you like keeping everyone in the dark?" Elena's gaze lifted slowly. She didn't smile. She didn't laugh. The pause stretched, the desert heat amplifying every second. Around them, the SEAL's laughter faltered. A bead of sweat traced down Hawk's temple, unnoticed until he realized all eyes had shifted toward them. The helicopter overhead whirred, hovering just long enough to remind them that this was not a training simulation. They were on a live, coordinated range. Hawk leaned closer, expecting banter, a punchline, the usual camaraderie. "Come on, just tell me," he pressed. "I won't bite." Elena's voice was soft, controlled, almost melodic, but it carried the weight of experience that none of them had anticipated. "You might be surprised," she said, eyes locking with Hawk's. Her words hung in the air like a challenge, and for the first time, the cocky SEAL felt the shift of authority, the subtle but undeniable assertion that he had misjudged her entirely. The team froze, unsure whether to laugh or step back. Hawk's mouth opened and closed, fumbling for a reply that never came. Radio chatter continued in the background, but it sounded distant, muffled by the sudden tension that had wrapped the group like a thick desert haze. Alina moved forward deliberately, scanning the array of weapons and personnel, her presence commanding without needing to raise her voice. "This is Viper. All units eyes on me," she said calmly, her tone carrying over the radios. Hawk's teammates exchanged uneasy glances, radio frequencies humming in quiet acknowledgement. Even the nearby range officer paused mid-instruction, sensing the shift. Elena's minimalistic style, quick nods, measured steps, precise gestures spoke louder than words ever could. Hawk finally managed, his voice tight. "You're kidding, right?" Alina shook her head slightly. "Check the database," she said, her fingers brushing the side of her rifle. "Or better yet, trust your eyes." She didn't elaborate, but that was enough. The SEALs felt it. Decades of unseen missions, covert operations, leadership earned in silence rather than announcements. Respect settled in the pit of their stomachs, unfamiliar and immediate. Hawk's grin had vanished. The bravado that had carried him through countless exercises was gone, replaced by a flush of humiliation he hadn't felt since basic training. Around him, subtle nods and barely perceptible salutes began forming from those who had caught the implication. Alina remained impassive, yet every gesture radiated control and authority. The mess hall had been full of jokes and jabs moments before, but now it was almost sacred in its silence. Even the hum of the helicopter seemed secondary to the palpable weight of recognition. Hawk exhaled slowly, eyes meeting Elena's once more. He realized that no quip, no challenge could undo the truth that she carried. She was more than rank. She was legacy. Minutes passed with the desert sun blazing overhead, yet no one moved too quickly. The SEALs recalibrated their perception, aware they were in the presence of someone whose reputation had preceded her, whose authority was invisible but undeniable. Alina finally picked up her radio, confirming details of the exercise with calm precision, and the subtle ripple of admiration swept through the group. Even Hawk found himself listening intently, learning, absorbing, humbled in ways the day had not promised. By the time the briefing resumed and weapons were checked one last time, the dynamic had irrevocably changed. Elena's measured control had rewritten the rules of the game. No longer was she just a participant. She was the pivot around which the exercise would turn. Every glance toward her reminded the SEALs that assumptions were dangerous, and the quietest presence often carried the heaviest weight. As the range buzzed back to operational activity, Hawk kept stealing glances, a newfound respect etched on his features. Alina had not shouted, not threatened, not demonstrated force. She had simply been herself, letting competence speak louder than ego. The room remained tense, but beneath the discipline and protocols, an unspoken understanding had taken hold. The day's lessons were only beginning, and one question had changed everything. And as Hawk considered what he had just learned, the shadow of what was to come settled over the mess hall, promising that rank revealed in jest would not be the last surprise of the day. The next moments would expose the full measure of her authority, and no one in the room would ever underestimate Viper again. No one expected the quiet officer to respond with such calm authority until her words silenced the room. The desert sun had climbed higher since the morning briefing, casting harsh shadows across the range at 0915 hours. The SEAL team remained at their stations, M4 variants slung over shoulders, fingers brushing sidearms, eyes darting between targets and each other. Hawk's grin had faded, replaced by a tight line of tension. Radios clicked intermittently, call signs exchanged. Hawk, VIPER, Shadow. The observation deck loomed roughly 150 meters above the line, wherefore generals watched, their posture straight, eyes narrowing, scanning for the slightest disruption. Alina stood near the center of the mess hall, calm and deliberate. Her dark hair was pulled tight. Hazel eyes scanned every face, every posture. She had not raised her voice yet, but her presence carried weight, a force of authority that the SEALs could not ignore. Hawk shuffled his boots nervously. "All right, Viper," he muttered. "What's your deal? You hiding a promotion? Or is this just part of your quiet mystery act?" Elena's eyes met his, steady and unblinking. "You might want to reconsider assumptions, Lieutenant," she said softly, the weight of her tone slicing through the lingering laughter of the SEALs. The room tilted slightly, the air thickening, as if the desert wind itself had paused. Hawk froze mid-step, realizing her statement was not a joke. She continued, listing accomplishments with measured cadence, each one precise, each detail verifiable through her covert assignments. Missions most could only whisper about in classified corridors, years of operations in hostile zones. Leadership in circumstances so extreme that even seasoned operators hesitated to mention them. The SEAL's eyes widened, jaws tightening. Every casual smirk evaporated, replaced by tight-lipped awareness. Hawk swallowed hard. His playful tone dissolved entirely under the magnitude of her reputation. "This is Viper. All eunuchs' eyes on me," she spoke into the radio, and the clicks and murmurs of the room seemed to obey instinctively. The SEALs complied, shoulders stiffening, fingers brushing triggers without tension. Even the generals shifted in their seats, sensing the sudden pivot in authority. The atmosphere changed. The mess hall hummed with unspoken acknowledgement. Hawk's mind raced. He had assumed rank was measured in loudness and ego, in bravado and constant affirmation. He had been wrong. Elena did not need to assert her rank. It was evident in every deliberate movement, every calm correction, every quiet instruction. He looked around at his teammates, the subtle nods, the way they adjusted stances, how their eyes flicked toward her like magnets. Respect had landed before words even left her mouth. The flashback began in his mind, a cinematic montage of what Elena had endured, what she had commanded. Hostile territory extractions, reconnaissance missions deep behind enemy lines, leadership of mixed nationality units with precision and discretion, faces of past operatives she had saved. Every scenario executed flawlessly, unseen by the world but meticulously recorded in classified logs. Hawk saw her in those flashes as more than an officer. He saw a force of nature, contained yet unyielding. General McAllister, sensing the subtle shift, leaned forward, voice calm but carrying weight. "All activity pause. Recognition is warranted." His order reverberated through the mess hall, and the room slowed as if time itself had acknowledged Elena's authority. The other generals followed suit, standing and observing with measured attention. The SEALs instinctively formed a tighter formation, the drill line snapping into disciplined alignment. Hawk's shoulders slumped slightly, a flush of humility warming his face. Other SEALs shifted subtly, masking surprise, recalibrating rapidly. Some exchanged glances, realizing they had misjudged her entirely. Elena moved among them with quiet efficiency, confirming loadouts, checking distances, relaying instructions through radio calls without a hint of arrogance. Hawk, verify target zones. Shadow, report obstacle clearance. Each directive precise, measured, executed immediately. Her authority was not demanded. It was absorbed, acknowledged, respected. Hawk cleared his throat. I misread you," he admitted quietly, almost to himself. His teammates caught the admission, a small ripple of understanding moving through the unit. Humility replaced ego, attention replaced jest. Elena's presence dominated without flourish, her competence speaking louder than any badge or title. The generals watched, assessing, measuring the dynamic, their respect crystallizing in real time. The SEAL team rallied around Elena's authority, executing commands with renewed precision, the exercise resuming under her unseen but absolute leadership. The desert heat pressed on, but the intensity of the revelation burned hotter, leaving every operator aware that lessons had been delivered in silence and in clarity. By the time the radios fell quiet and the immediate tasks settled, Hawk understood the magnitude of what had occurred. Assumptions were shattered, and respect had been earned without a single boast. Elena had revealed just enough to realign the hierarchy without humiliation beyond what was necessary to teach a lesson in awareness and humility. Every operator knew the day would be different now. The weight of her covert accomplishments lingered in the room, invisible yet undeniable, shaping interactions and expectations. Hawk straightened slightly, shoulders back, eyes forward, mentally cataloging the correction. Elena's calm authority had not only shifted perception, but had subtly commanded allegiance. The SEALs and generals alike would carry this recognition forward, the silent acknowledgement of her rank shaping every move for the rest of the exercise. And as the wind swept across the range, the tension gave way to focused anticipation. The stage set for the final confirmation of her legend in the moments to come. The room held its breath until 4 sets of polished boots clicked forward in unison. The observation deck, bathed in late morning sunlight, seemed to shrink as the generals stepped into view. Each one perfectly aligned, eyes locked on Alina Cruz. The SEAL team, positioned at 5-meter intervals along the range line, froze mid-motion, rifles at rest but senses alert. The desert wind whispered across the sand, carrying dust and lazy spirals, but the air inside the mess hall crackled with a different energy: recognition, respect, awe. Alina stood tall, M4 slung across her chest, sidearm secure, eyes scanning each operator calmly, confidently, without a trace of arrogance. Hawk Miller's hands, once cocky and loose, tightened at his sides. His earlier bravado evaporated entirely as he watched the generals execute a flawless salute. The lines of rank and authority he had once joked about now pressed on him with undeniable weight. His colleagues mirrored his reaction, some stiffening, some subtly nodding, all acutely aware of the shift that had been set in motion. The room, previously filled with chatter and laughter, now existed in a single shared moment of acknowledgement. "Hawk, report status." Elena's voice cut through the tension, calm and commanding. "Roger, Viper," Hawk replied, his tone measured, humility edging his words. "All units accounted for. Weapons idle. Range clear. VIPER. Confirm command post." Another voice chimed over the radio. "This is VIPER. All units clear," Alina responded. The clarity and authority in her voice left no room for misinterpretation. Her command did not require volume. It carried weight inherently understood by everyone present. The SEALs, generals, and range officers absorbed the moment in silence, internalizing the presence of a leader whose credentials were now undeniably proven. Alina began moving along the line, inspecting positions, checking scopes, ensuring loadouts were properly configured. Every gesture was deliberate, economical, precise. SEALs responded instantly to her subtle cues, recalibrating stances and adjusting fire lanes. Hawk followed her, noting the elegance with which she balanced command and observation, how her leadership inspired immediate trust without coercion. The generals continued their silent vigil, impressed by the cohesion and fluidity of her oversight. One of the younger SEALs, eyes wide, whispered to a teammate, "Did we just watch a legend in action?" His tone carried disbelief and reverence simultaneously. Others nodded subtly, realizing that the quiet officer had not only earned the respect of the room, but had reshaped the dynamic of the entire exercise. Hawk exhaled slowly, shoulders easing as he processed the weight of his earlier assumptions. "Viper, I owe you an apology," he murmured, barely audible but sincere. Alina only inclined her head, acknowledging without elaboration her attention fully on the task at hand. Time seemed to stretch. Alina orchestrated the remainder of the exercise with precision. Call signs exchanged cleanly, obstacles navigated flawlessly, communications crisp and exact. Shadow, secure, east flank, Viper, verify target zones. Hawk, maintain perimeter checks. Each order executed instantly, demonstrating the seamless integration of authority, experience, and operational skill. The SEAL team moved as one entity, no hesitation, no question, reflecting the subtle but complete dominance of Elena's leadership. The generals, witnessing the smooth execution, finally allowed themselves a brief nod of approval. Their salute had been more than ceremonial. It was recognition of expertise, courage, and the invisible legacy of countless covert operations. Hawk's posture straightened further, his humility deepening. The previous tension, the earlier jokes, the underestimated officer, all of it had been eclipsed by undeniable mastery. Respect was no longer optional. It was inevitable. As the exercise concluded, Elena directed the final maneuvers with the same calm efficiency, ensuring every scenario was completed to the highest standard. The SEALs executed the last protocols flawlessly, the cohesion between operators and leader palpable. Hawk approached, careful and measured. "You earned that," he said quietly. "All of it." Elena gave a brief nod, allowing the statement to stand without response. A silent acknowledgement that leadership was demonstrated, not boasted. With the final tasks checked off, the room exhaled collectively. Radios went silent, weapons secured, formations relaxed. The generals stepped back, leaving the space open, their respect unspoken but unmistakable. The SEALs exchanged glances, a mix of admiration and newfound trust reflecting across their faces. Hawk lingered for a moment, absorbing the full measure of what had transpired. Realizing that lessons in humility and leadership had been delivered more effectively than any briefing or drill could have achieved. Elena moved toward the observation deck, the wind tugging at her uniform, eyes tracing the horizon beyond the range. She paused, allowing herself a brief moment of reflection, surveying the desert expanse that had witnessed the unfolding of authority, respect, and teamwork. Her silhouette, calm and assured, cast a shadow that seemed larger than her physical presence. The SEALs watched silently, understanding that today had rewritten their understanding of rank, skill, and command. As the sun climbed higher, bathing the desert in a relentless glow, the exercise concluded under Elena's quiet but absolute control. Every participant carried forward the imprint of her authority, the clarity of her leadership, and the subtle power of competence executed without fanfare. Today had been a lesson in humility, recognition, and unspoken mastery. Leaving an indelible mark on all who had been present, Elena's gaze lingered on the horizon, hinting at missions yet untold and challenges still waiting beyond the desert.